Hey, 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 welcome back to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. I am your host, Aaron Farmer, and today we've got another fantastic episode with Carrie Brown. We're going to be talking about how to cook keto, how to get the right stuff in your pantry, how to get prepared, how to get started. Lots of great information. Carrie, thank you so much for coming back.
Hey, Aaron, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, Carrie, last time we've covered some great information, and I have to tell you that I have not ordered the microwave pork rinds that we talk about last time, and that is on my list.
Shame on you.
Yes, I keep meaning to do it.
You could have saved yourself a fortune.
Yes. I really want to, and the idea of there is a pork rind out there that I can microwave like popcorn just sounds really, really good.
And you could pick your own seasonings and kind of change it up without spending a bunch of money, and always have them on hand.
I am a fan of that. I just need to break down and do it.
So get to it, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Pork rind nirvana is within reach.
Sounds great. I don't have any like snack foods. I don't keep them in the house, but every once in a while you want something a little crunchy. You want something, that tastes good, that's on the ketogenic diet, and that the thing I love about pork rinds is the crunch. I want that crunchy crunch.
Yep. And actually, we're going to be pork rinds are on the list of things to talk about today. So we'll get to that again in a minute. Good
deal. So, what are we talking about today? Walk us through it.
Well, this is more like we started about how to start and keeping it simple last time I was here. But I thought it would be super useful for people who are new, and also people that maybe aren't new but just need a bit of a recap or a rethink as to how to stock a keto pantry, or what should your pantry look like if you're keto. I think the difference between a standard American diet pantry and a keto pantry is vast. And a lot of people, particularly new people, are going to be going, okay, if I remove all the garbage, like my cupboards are bare, what am I supposed to be putting in my cupboard? So I thought this may be useful to help some people make the transition.
And that's when I have a new keto person, someone that I'm talking to and getting them to make that switch. The first thing that we have to do, and probably the one thing that is most conducive to long-term success, is throw crap away that's in your pantry. Sometimes we'll donate it, but the idea is you just got to get it out. You got to get those Cheerios and the crappy foods that you thought were healthy. Just get those out of the pantry, get them away from you, because what's going to happen is it's going to be 11 p.m. You're going to be hungry, and you're going to go in the pantry, and you're going to see what you used to eat, and you're going to be like, just this one time. And if it's not in the pantry, the potential of you slipping up is much, much smaller.
Yep, you are much less likely to be derailed if you don't have that food in the house.
Absolutely.
But you're human like we are, and you're going to get the munchies. There's going to be times where you get the munchies. So you do want to have some keto things on hand. So setting up your pantry right is super useful for keeping you on track. It's much more difficult to fall off the wagon if your old poison of choice is not available. It's much more difficult to, if you get up, it's 10 o'clock at night and you actually have to get dressed again and get in the car and drive to the store and find something. You're much less likely to do that if you have keto things in your house and don't have any of the garbage. So that's why idea number one is,
we're into ideas, not rules.
If you're starting on a keto lifestyle, or you've been on one for a while and things maybe aren't going how you would like them to, go through your kitchen and go through all your cupboards and your fridge and your freezer and remove all the garbage, all the non-keto things, all the processed vegetable oils as well, all of that. Just get rid of it all. And I know, and I'm a very frugal person, so I know that it can kind of hurt, like I spent money on that. And, but if you spent money on it, you're still going to be consuming foods that are damaging your body. Right. So I highly recommend that you just get over the money that you feel like you lost and just cut the cord and not eat that food because of the money, because you're actually just going to be doing more damage to your body. So just suck it up and take it if it's in, if it's in good condition and it makes you feel better, take it to the food bank. Because some food is better than no food at all. Exactly. So if you have no food, then, even garbage is better than nothing. Take it to the food bank, but somehow get it out of your kitchen.
So usually what I'll say is if I told you how to lose hundreds of pounds, reverse your type 2 diabetes, save your feet, keep from going blind, reduce your risk of cancer, reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, and it only cost you $40 or $50, would you pay that $40 or $50? And usually they'll say yes and say, okay, well, I'm not going to charge you anything. So let's throw away $40 or $50 worth of food and not feel bad about it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's idea number one. It's actually, when you think about restocking your pantry for a keto lifestyle, you're going to have a lot less things. You're going to have, if you have a small kitchen and you've always been lamenting cupboard space, you're going to have a lot of cupboard space that you didn't have before.
More storage,
because a lot of keto foods need to live in the freezer or the fridge because the best keto food is real whole food. So there's a lot less pantry items taking up a lot less space in a keto pantry than there is in a standard American diet. Pantry.
Yeah. So when you eat something, this is another one of these ideas I try to get across. When you eat something, you drop it into a vat of hydrochloric acid, your body dissolves it, and there's bacteria and there's things going on in your gut that's breaking that food down. If you're eating food that bacteria can't break down because it's full of preservatives and everything, you're basically eating food that doesn't offer any level of nutrition. You've got to eat food that goes bad. And if the majority of your diet is food that doesn't go bad, it's in a box, it's in a bag, it's it doesn't need to be refrigerated, then your level of nutrition that you're taking in is very, very, very low. So the majority of your foods have to go bad.
Right. And there's an increasing number of keto foods that come in packets, and there are places for those things.
I don't trust them.
Lifestyle.
I really don't. And there is a place for them, but
I
just don't trust them.
I'm with you. A lot of them say they're keto, but actually aren't. A lot of them may technically be keto in that they give you no carbohydrates, but they're using dodgy ingredients, and particularly the use of highly processed seed and vegetable oils.
Seed and vegetable oils, that's it.
Because they're cheap. So there's a growing number of them out there. The good ones, the good clean ones, have a place in some people's lifestyle, depending on what you do and if you travel a lot and, if you have kids and so on and so forth. But even so, they should never make up any more than a tiny percentage of your overall food intake. So you're not going to have a ton of even keto packaged foods in your house. So even if you have some for emergencies, it's not going to be a big part of your keto diet.
Right.
So your pantry is going to be a lot thinner on the ground, which is good. The other reason why your pantry is going to be a lot thinner on the ground, apart from the points we've mentioned, is that snacking is going to we don't recommend snacking. We would always recommend eating more at your meal times, eating to satiety at your meal time. So eating bigger, fewer meals rather than more smaller meals.
Right.
And most people find, in my experience, that if they eat good keto meals, they actually lose the need to snack. And I know this is the same for you, Erin, is that I rarely eat more than 2 meals a day. 2 meals is my kind of standard now. And I can leave the house and go all day and not have to snack or not worry about food at all. So the amount of snack food in your pantry is going to drop a lot on keto, because most people find they don't actually need to snack at all.
Yeah, you're not going to have to eat, and that's a big deal. You're not going to have to eat every 3 hours like you used to.
Right.
And that is, so again, when I'm talking to new people, the one of the pushbacks I get is, that sounds expensive, eating a lot of meat and vegetables. Well, at first there's a transition. There's no doubt, but you eat so much less.
Right.
In fact, here's one of my favorite posts that I ever wrote on my site, and it's one of these posts that just, as soon as I wrote it, it disappeared into the Ethernet. Nobody has ever seen it. No one searches for this, but it's my personal favorite post that I ever wrote, was breaking down my calories over the time that I lost weight. So I lost 200 pounds. If a pound of, remember the math, if a pound of fat is 3,500 calories, that means I lost 700,000 calories over the course of my weight loss. I did it over 3 years, so let's call it 1,000. Let's call it 1,000 days. So you divide one into the other, you get that I ate at a 700 calorie deficit every day for 3 years. That's what the ketogenic diet allows you to do. Is that, and of course there are other metabolic advantages of eating keto, and I get that. But whatever the thing is, either I ate less or my metabolic rate went up to the tune of 700 calories a day difference. That's a big deal. That's a lot of food that I didn't eat for 3 years straight, didn't feel hungry, and didn't feel deprived. That's a big deal.
The volume of food we eat on keto is a lot less. So even though some of that food may be more expensive, so, your grass-fed beef or more proteins and more fresh veggies, they may cost more, but you're going to eat a lot less overall. And snack food is very expensive. So if you take all the snack food that you used to eat out of your diet and out of your food budget, you're going to find that more than makes up for the cost of the really, really good, fresh, whole food that you will want to be eating. So
totally.
I'm going to talk about what you would have in a typical low carb pantry. Of course, if you're carnivore and your whole family is carnivore, then most of this is just like you have meat and eggs in your and maybe some heavy cream in your and coffee, and that's pretty much it. But most people may dabble in carnivore at times to get a specific result or to see what happens when they do it. But for most people, they're going to have a general low carb pantry, which is going to involve a bunch of other foods, not just meat and eggs. And just a little aside that there's a lot of the pantry items that I'm going to talk about are mainly used in the production of what you might call copycat. So things like keto versions of the old sad favorites. And that there's a few schools of thought on this. Here's mine. Some people absolutely don't need them. There are people in the world who could exist just eating meat and cheese and eggs and be happy forever. There are another bunch of people who love the variety, they love cooking, they love all the different tastes and textures and so on and so forth. And that would be a really, really it would be too big a thing for them to take out of their life and never have again, because, and I'm one of those people that I just love food. And that doesn't mean that I love eating a huge amount of it. It means that I love eating really good, interesting food. So
I know with my wife, it's there's certain dishes that she wants a almond meal loaf of bread, a slice of bread or whatever to go with that food.
right.
It's just that kind of food. It goes, bread goes with it. She wants it. She makes it. That's how she
Right.
eats. Fine.
So there are some people who just don't need it,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some people who are just fine without them. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong for you to do it.
Right.
There are some people who never want to give up those flavors or those tastes. There are some people who find that they need them just for the transition. I've met so many people who were like, Carrie, if I couldn't have had your keto ice cream for the first year, I would not have stayed the course. That was what kept me going. That being able to have that same texture, same flavors, all the same stuff, but without the load of the garbage, I wouldn't have made it through that first year. Now I don't eat it that much because I've kind of, my palate has changed, but I needed it to get me through the transition through the first year. I've had other people that said fat bombs. A fat bomb after dinner was just what got me through. So the people who are yelling that, we shouldn't be eating fat bombs, they're kind of missing a big part of the emotion of eating, and that, be that right or wrong, it doesn't matter. If having a fat bomb with your dinner is what keeps you on the keto train until you either get the results you want or you've got past the cravings, then have that fat bomb.
Couldn't agree more. I am all for stoicism and just powering through if that appeals to you. But, there's a lot of people that want a little more joy in their life. They're a little more Epicurean and they want more, they want sweet something or another. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it gets you, if you use it as a bridge to get you from one place to another.
I would much rather someone have a scoop of my keto ice cream every night.
Absolutely.
Than drive themselves silly and end up going to the store and buying a tub of Ben and Jerry's and eating the whole thing, right? Yep. So I would much rather that. So, but is it something we should do all the time? No, depending on your goals and where you're at. But is that an infinitely better choice than breaking down and going to the store for your Haagen-Dazs, your Ben and Jerry's? Absolutely.
Yeah, and sometimes you want to make food for other people than just you. Like my kids are grown; they're out of the house. I have grandkids now, but when they come over for Father's Day is coming up. This is after Father's Day, but I'd like to at least have the option to make a really good ice cream that we can all eat together, and I don't have to feel guilty about it, or or some kind of dessert after dinner, because they're not keto; they're just kids living their lives. But I'd still like, when they come to my house, I want to feed them good food.
Right. So with that in mind, here's a kind of a rundown, and we can put I have a blog post which gives you lists. I know people love lists, and we can put that in the show notes. But I'm just going to rattle off the main things that are in my pantry, bearing in mind that I develop recipes which include things for keto ice cream and keto baked goods and the things that you may need in a transition or forever or for visitors, or you may not need at all. But here's kind of what my low carb keto pantry looks like. There's your nut and seed flours. So your almond flour, your almond meal, your coconut flour, maybe some sunflower seed flour, those kind of things. Those are the things that are typically used to replace wheat flours in baked goods. A little aside to that is that all nut products should be kept in the freezer. If you don't have a big enough freezer, in the fridge. Nuts are super high in fat, which is one of the reasons we love them on a keto diet. Fat does go rancid and quicker than you might think.
That's interesting.
Especially if you live somewhere hot. So all nut products in the freezer, and you can actually eat the nuts out the freezer because they have such a high fat content. They don't freeze hard like a rock. And your almond flour, if you keep that in the freezer, you can literally get it out of the freezer 2 minutes. It's ready to use. So all nut products in the freezer, if you've no room in the freezer, in the fridge.
What about coconut flour? Coconut, does that need to go in the freezer?
I keep my all my nut products in the freezer. Yeah. Pork rinds, your favorite. So this is one thing that's great if you do find that you have the munchies and you need a snack. Pork rinds are awesome. And I mentioned in last month's episode that you can actually get Carolina Gold nuggets. You can get them on Amazon. And they're like the little bits of skin, and you just puff them into pork rind puffs that you buy in the store. You just do them yourself, either in the oven or in the microwave. So they have a very, very long shelf life. You only puff the amount you need. You can add whatever seasonings you want to change them up. And they are unbelievably cheaper. I mean, like you can buy a huge bag for like $20, $25, which will last you a whole year. Versus the $4 a packet for the ones you buy in the store. So pork rinds are great in a pantry. Other things that I use in baking is egg white powder. I use that. Some people use whey powder. Egg white powder. So if I need to add protein, so egg white powder will help you give structure in baked goods. So some of my recipes will include egg white powder. The most popular thing to use in those instances is whey powder, but whey can be really insulinogenic for a lot of people. So a lot of people don't react well with whey, or it causes them to gain weight. So to make it simple, I switched to using egg white powder. If you're good with whey protein and you prefer to use that, have at it. But I prefer to use egg white powder because nobody responds badly to egg white powder, except if you're allergic to eggs. But so I have egg white powder. I do have whey powder, but that's not my preferred thing. Then your chocolate products. So your cocoa powder, which of course should always be 100% cocoa, no sugar, nothing else added. Chocolate, that can all be kept in your pantry. Flavorings and extracts, super, super useful. I use them a lot in making ice creams, or you can make beverages. There's flavors and extracts are a really great way to bring a ton of variety into your keto lifestyle that you might be missing. So I have a bunch of those. The other tools for baking include a couple of gums, guar gum and xanthan gum, and we're going to do an episode on those. So and also konjac or glucomannan powder is also something. So thickeners and things used in baking will be in your pantry. Gelatin and also collagen are things I have in my keto pantry. Super, super useful. Oils. You'll have oils in your pantry, but you want to stay away from all seed and vegetable oils. They're highly processed. They're really not good for us at all. So you'll want to stick to coconut oil, avocado oil, butter. Of course, for most people that would be in the fridge, but you can also leave it out. Ghee, lard, animal fats and olive oil is what you want to focus on. So you'll have those. Eggs. If you're not in the US, you can almost certainly leave your eggs out in the pantry rather than in the fridge. In the US, you have to refrigerate them because American egg producers wash them, the magic chicken dust that chickens put around the eggs when they lay them is washed off in the States, which means that the eggs, the shell is no longer protected. So eggs in the US have to be refrigerated. Outside the US, they don't.
That's interesting.
I'd never put an egg in the fridge in my life until I moved over to the States.
Really?
So, and backyard chicken eggs, you do not have to refrigerate. So if you have your own chickens, then you can just leave those out. Sweeteners. If you use keto sweeteners, they will also be in your pantry. There's a whole minefield that we'll do an episode on that as a separate thing, because that's a thing. That's a minefield of a thing, but you'll have some sweeteners if you choose to use them. Canned protein is something you might also keep stocked up. I have tuna, I have salmon, clams, sardines. I'm a huge sardine fan. Sardines are so fantastically nutrient dense. So canned fish products I have in my pantry.
Talking about snacks, a can of Wild Planet sardines. That's like if I want something, not an hour or two before dinner, pop open a can of Wild Planet sardines, and that hits the spot. It's good stuff.
Yep, sardines are awesome. Nut milks and also boxed stock, something I have in my pantry. So bone broth, which of course can stay out until they're open, and then they need to go in the fridge. But an unopened bone broth, chicken stock, beef stock, and also the nut milks, your almond milk, coconut milk, macadamia, all your nut milks can stay out until they're opened, and then they go in the fridge. Jarred tomato sauces. You do have to be careful, and we're going to talk about labels shortly, but like your pasta sauces that you would use for making a keto lasagna, or all those, spaghetti bolognese, those are one of the few jarred things I have. Also tomato paste I have. As I say, you do have to be careful reading the label, but we'll go over that soon. And then of course coffee. You'll have coffee and teas. I love herbal teas, so I have a bunch of different herbal teas. And then seasonings. Their seasonings are a fantastic way, like extracts, fantastic way to change up your keto and make, really kind of boring things taste fantastic. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of spices and dried herbs in my pantry too.
We talked, I think, last week or last month or a month before about my favorite seasoning, and I think you said you didn't have it up there. Tahini? You don't have tahini up in Connecticut?
No.
I think it's a Texas thing, because it's very much a Hispanic flavor, but it's chili lime salt. And almost any vegetable that we eat, Brussels, things like that, I'll put that on liberally. It is so good.
Yeah, there's some great seasonings out there. You do have to be careful, because those manufacturers do like to put rubbish in them. Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about labels, so you have to be careful with everything. But seasonings are a great way to change things up. Mm-hmm. Other things, we talked about tea, jerky. Jerky, if you need a snack, jerky can be a good alternative to pork rinds or sardines. Mm-hmm. Vinegars.
And really easy to make. If you have a dehydrator, we will knock out our dehydrator and make a month or two's worth of jerky, because it lasts forever once you make it. It's yep. If you haven't done it, try making your own jerky. It tastes great.
Yep. And vinegars. Vinegars can really make flavors pop in dishes if you know how to use them. So I have quite a bunch of vinegars of course you have to read the label, but I have quite a bunch of vinegars that you can use to make some really cool sauces and dressings and make otherwise bland foods taste really good.
I just had an expert on glyphosate on here about 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about how if you have to eat food that's been treated with glyphosate, and most of us do, if you eat a salad or whatever, putting a little bit of raw apple cider vinegar on it will help the body break down the glyphosate, and can be a so if you have a salad with some raw apple cider vinegar and some olive oil, salt and pepper, not only does it taste great, but you're helping to kind of undo some of the damage that modern farming techniques have done to our food.
Yep, vinegars are super useful, and as you mentioned, Erin, particularly apple cider vinegar is kind of magic. It's magical. It does lots of good things to your body.
Right.
So that's pretty much what my keto pantry looks like.
How do you feel about like kombucha? Do you drink that?
I really don't. It's
Yeah.
not something I have found time to make myself, and most of the commercially available ones still just have a bunch of
Yeah.
sugar in.
Will do.
There's a couple that I like, but they're $4 a pop. So once if I can find one that isn't loaded down with sugar or other things.
So I bought an inspirational book because I'm gonna make me some kombucha, and this book is absolutely beautiful. And I even have a kit in my pantry. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and then I've owned this for probably 3 years now, and have never even that might be the most I've touched it in 3 years.
Well, now you've put it out there now, so now we're expecting great things.
Oh, no.
But for me, it's if I can find one that doesn't have all the sugar or other things that I don't want to put in my body, then I have the cost barrier, So for me, there is a couple of commercially available ones that I like, but it'll literally be a once every 6 month treat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in general, fermented foods are really, really good for you. They're really good for your gut. It's just a case of finding the good ones. I know beets typically are too carby for a lot of people, but I have a wonderful jar of fermented beets, and I just have it as like a couple of tablespoons.
Yeah.
As a side, almost like kimchi. Like I'll just have a couple of spoonfuls of it because beets are very good for the gut, and so is the fermentation process. So I'll have that instead of having a sauce dressing. I'll just have a couple of tablespoons of my fermented beets, just from a health perspective. And of course, a couple of tablespoons isn't going to do anything to my intake of carbs. Nothing appreciable anyway. So that's a basic keto pantry. Is there anything that you can think of in your pantry that I forgot, Erin?
Yeah, you didn't mention olives and pickles. I do keep those in there. I guess you're not an olive fan.
Hey, olives are proof that the devil exists.
Oh no! Goodness gracious!
So yeah, that's why they're not on my radar, because yeah, I'm not an olive fan, but that's purely just a taste thing. Olives are great, just not for my taste buds.
Yeah. So yeah, olives and pickles are probably the two things that are kind of in the back of my head that you didn't mention. What I'm doing is walking through my grocery store and seeing.
A lot of people, in fact, one of the kind of the urban, I'm not going to call it a myth, one of the urban legends is that if you have cravings, drinking pickle juice will really help with the cravings. Okay. So, and I don't know whether that's true because pickle juice isn't my jam. No. But that may be something that a lot of people have been successful with, is combating sugar cravings when they're new to keto with pickle juice. So there you go. Maybe that's a thing, maybe it's not, but if you like pickles, it's worth a try.
I can't imagine it's easy to eat something sweet after you cover your mouth in sour dill juice. Pickle juice. I think you're like, I don't want that. That makes
anyway,
sense.
We'll give you the, I also have a list of specific ingredients. I know people love to know specifically what brands of this and that I use. So I have 2 articles up on my blog, and the second one of which has the details, and it also has which brands I prefer to use. So we'll post those in the show notes, and hopefully that will be helpful for someone, or for everyone maybe.
Good deal.
So the other thing I thought it would be useful to talk about is reading labels, because reading labels is super, super, super important. Mm-hmm. Especially if you've never done it before. It can be a lot more to it than you might. If you glance at a label, you might think, oh, that's okay. So there is more to label reading than meets the eye, and label reading can save you from many a unintentional fall off the wagon. So the first idea when we're talking about reading labels is to read them.
Yeah.
Like, really read the label. In keto, you kind of really want to focus on the foods that don't need a label. So your fresh meat, your veggies, although veggies and fruits are a little bit of a minefield, as we mentioned in the last month's episode. But if something doesn't need a label, then more than likely you're okay with it in terms of, your meats and your proteins. One of the things that really, really makes it difficult for consumers is that the front of the label, if you're looking at a label, the packaging, the front will often be screaming something like, fat-free, sugar-free, like packed with healthy this, or, made with avocado, or all of that. You should ignore everything that's on the front. Everything that's claiming to be something, even if it sounds really good, like it's called, avocado mayo, like ignore it all. Just ignore all the front, because that's just marketing, and a lot of it is incredibly misleading. So ignore the front of all labels. What you want to do is turn it over, and the nutrition stuff, the nutrition facts, is what's important for you to learn how to read and for you to do it. Ignore the front, turn it over, and look at that back label. If you've never read labels, you're going to be shocked when you start reading them and looking at what is in the food that you hopefully used to eat, rather than the food you're going to start eating now. So you want to look at the nutrition facts, but you also want to read the ingredients list. So there's two things. Because, for example, with oils, vegetable oils, seed oils, they are 100% keto in terms of they provide no carbohydrate.
Right. And they're high in fat. What could be wrong with that? And
they're high in fat, right? They're 100% fat. So just looking at the nutrition facts is going to say 100% fat, 0 carbs. You're like, whoop, this is keto. I can have this. So that's why reading the ingredients list is also important, because you want to know it's not just about the carbs. It's also about foods that are intrinsically healthy or unhealthy for us. So you want to read the nutrition facts to check the carb and the fat and the protein content, but you also want to read the ingredients, because if your goal is health as well as fat loss or weight loss, then ingredients also matter.
Right.
So especially with products like dairy, and especially with yogurt, we've been trained to think that dairy and yogurt is healthy. But if you flip those things over and read the labels, you will be blown away that a lot of the commercial healthy yogurts that are in the supermarket, if you turn them over, you'll discover that they actually have more sugar in them than regular ice cream.
And yogurt is just like any other product, in that if you want to be big in the yogurt game, you've got to add sugar to your product, because that's what Americans want, is they want that sugar. And so you go to your typical grocery store and look at, 12 feet wall of yogurt, finding the one, and sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two varieties without sugar is very, very difficult.
It's incredibly hard.
I should probably also mention, just because I didn't think about this until somebody brought it up, vanilla yogurt and plain yogurt are not the same thing. You're probably going to look for plain yogurt, not vanilla yogurt.
Yep. You want to look for plain yogurt. But I can tell you now that 99% of the yogurts in the grocery store, you will not want to eat on a keto diet.
Exactly.
So I've just saved you like 2 hours of label reading.
Right.
There's no yogurt you can eat. So there are a couple. Peak yogurt, which is currently only available on the West Coast and ships to the East Coast. But of course, shipping is expensive. But Peak yogurt is unbelievably low in sugar, and it is triple cream. So it has 17% fat, which is unbelievable. Wow. It's unheard of for a yogurt. Fantastic product. But as I say, it's not readily available yet. But I know the folks at Peak are working on it. I found I'm not sure what you use if you eat yogurt, but the best I found, best meaning lowest in sugar, is I buy Trader Joe's plain yogurt, but I buy the non-fat. Now, before you all lose your minds, the whole milk version has more carbs in than the non-fat version. So I buy the non-fat version and then I add heavy cream to essentially add the fat back in. So I get my yogurt, I add heavy cream, I mix it in, because that is lower carb than buying the whole milk version. But,
and you mentioned that last time we talked. I still didn't, I left not really understanding how that works, how you're taking out the fat and reducing the carbs. I mean, what is it?
I don't know what it is in their processing, or maybe it's just the carbs that are in the, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but if you read the label, there's less carbs in their non-fat than their whole milk. Huh. So, and that's a personal thing. I prefer to buy the lower carb and add heavy cream to add the fat back in.
Makes sense.
You may not have a Trader Joe's, and dairy can be very specific to the community in which you live. So you may have other options available to you that I don't, and vice versa. But don't stress if you can't find, if you end up buying fat-free yogurt, don't stress about it, because it's super easy to add fat back in the form of heavy cream, or even thick coconut milk. If that's your thing, you could add thick coconut milk to make it. It'll be slightly coconutty in flavor, but you can easily add fat to yogurt. You can't remove carbs. So that's yogurt. But you really, really, really need to read labels. The good news is that once you've gone through that work of reading all the labels and figured out what is the best of everything that you buy, you can stop reading labels unless it's a new item. So once you've figured out which in your market is the lowest sugar, the lowest carb, pasta sauce that also has no nefarious ingredients in it, then you know which one to buy. So you don't have to keep reading the labels over and over again. You just have to do it once until you figure out what you can have, and then that's it.
Perfect.
So you need to look at, as I said, you need to look at the gram counts, but you also need to look at the ingredients. And here's another example of why, since we were just talking about tomatoes. Tomato paste, or your tomato pasta sauces, tomatoes have sugar in them. So there is going to be sugars, there's going to be an amount of sugars or carbs on that label.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you can't have it. What you're looking for is no added sugar. So you can look on the label on the nutrition facts and see how many carbs there are, but then you want to look at the ingredients.
Right.
If there's sugar listed in the ingredients, put it back.
Right.
If there's no sugar listed in the ingredients, then the sugars listed in the nutrition facts are simply the onboard sugars that come in a tomato.
Right.
So those are the ones that you should be looking for. So it's not just about the carb count, it's also about what ingredients are in it. So for most people, the easiest way is if the ingredients list sugar in any of its forms, you just don't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my first experiences with this, like I I wasn't even keto then. I was just low carb. I was just trying to not eat sugar, and I ate a meal and sprinkled some garlic salt on my meal, and because I was trying to get in the habit of reading the like reading all the labels, I after I seasoned my food, I turned the garlic salt over, and the second ingredient in garlic salt was sugar. I was shocked. Why would you need sugar in garlic salt? It was salt, sugar, garlic powder or whatever. And I couldn't believe that this, it says garlic salt on the front. I'm only expecting to see garlic and salt.
Right.
And that was really the first time that I realized that there's sugar in everything, that you've really got to be diligent.
Right. And that's a great point. Don't assume things that should be fine. Don't
Yes.
assume that they actually are. And that, I mean, seasonings is a great example. You think, that in garlic salt, there'd be garlic and salt.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are just garlic and salt, but some of them aren't. So you need to read and find the best brands.
Mm-hmm.
And also another example of, you assume that sausages are going to be fine because it's just ground meat, right?
No, it's never ground meat.
Well, some of them are just like Trader Joe's have a beef hot dog that's just 100% beef.
Nice.
But with sausages, you've got to read the label. There are some fabulous sausages out there that have no added sugars, that have no fillers, that have no gluten, no grains. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of them that have all sorts of stuff in that you would never think would be in a sausage.
Yep.
So this is why it's not just about the nutrition facts and the macro quantities, but you also want to read the ingredients. Even if you think, but that's just a sausage, it's going to be fine, or that's just garlic salt, it's going to be fine. Don't assume. Read all the labels until you find the things that work for you,
mm-hmm.
and then stick with those. I'm a huge fan of sausages. I love sausages. And I probably spent more time in my life reading sausage labels than any other labels ever, because every time I discover new sausages, I want to try them. There's, farmers markets are a great place to find truly keto, additive-free, sugar-free, grain-free, fabulous sausages. You might pay a bit more for them, but in the long run, you're going to be a lot healthier.
So let me just mention something about processed meat for just a minute. Every time some new study comes out that says meat is bad for you, meat is going to give you a heart attack, whatever. When you dig into the numbers, the rate of, or the risk level for whole meat, like just red meat or pork, whatever, is very, very low. It's always the processed meat that raises the risk level to the point where you can get a headline that says it's, that meat is bad. They never say processed meat, just meat is bad. Well, typically when you're eating a processed meat, it typically, just like what Carrie just said, it's typically has grains and sugar, and it's the crap that's been added to this processed meat. That's what's raising the risk of colorectal cancer. That's what's raising the risk of cardiovascular disease. Again, it's not the meat. If you're just eating the meat, it's the crap that we add to Oscar Mayer bologna that raises the risk of getting all the crazy diseases that the vegans want you to think come from eating all meat. It's not eating all meat. It's eating meat that all that vegan food has been added to.
Right. So also you want to look at, depending on whether you do total carb or net carb, labels can help you determine where the food is, because it will say, typically on a label, it will say total carbs, and then underneath it will say fiber. So that's the place where if it says, 20 grams of total carbs and then underneath 9 grams of fiber, then for those of us who do net, that's 11. So that's how you can work out whether it fits into your macros, either whether you're total or net. And also you can remove, they're now listing sugar alcohol separately. So under the total carb line, you'll see fiber, you'll see sugars, and then you'll see sugar alcohols. You can subtract the fiber and the sugar alcohols if you're doing net. So that's how you can easily work that out. The other thing that makes reading labels super, super important is serving size. So, and the manufacturers are getting super sneaky that you turn it over and you read the gram counts of how much fat, carbs, and protein it has in it. And typically you're holding this thing, whatever it is in your hand, and you're going, in your mind, it's going, oh, that's what's in this packet, jar, bag, whatever. That's what it is. Later, then you might discover that actually those numbers relate to a third of that packet.
Right. A serving size.
Which changes everything. So it's super important. 3 things: the ingredients list, because ingredients matter, the nutrient breakdown, which will tell you how much carbs, how much protein, how much fat, how much fiber, but you also want to take into account the serving size. So for example, those bags of a purely keto product is like the Moon cheese or those cheese crisps. You're looking at those ingredients at the nutrition facts and you're saying, oh, it's this much fat and this much protein, but you don't realize, and so you might just go ahead and eat the whole bag, not realizing that you're actually eating 2 or 3 times
Exactly
what it says in terms of fats or proteins, because one bag might not equal the serving size data that is on the back of the packet.
Exactly.
So, and if I'm going to miss something on a label, I always, not always, but if I'm going to miss something, it'll be the serving size, because it's so ingrained. You're going, oh, those numbers, oh, that sounds great. You know, I can eat that. Always check the serving size to make sure how much of that packet, jar, box is giving you the nutrient breakdown that is listed on the packet, because very often they're very different and you could very easily railroad yourself unintentionally by eating the whole thing, not realizing that you've got 2 or 3 times the nutrient breakdown that you thought you were going to have.
So Steak and Iron just tweeted something just before we came on. I was looking at, he's got 2 identical cans of salmon, same manufacturer, same, can and everything. One says it's a product of the U.S. One has been imported from China, but it's the same manufacturer. When you turn it over, the macros for each can are radically different. Like the amount of protein in each can, the number of fat in each can, and it's just wild caught canned salmon. But apparently, wherever China catches their salmon from versus wherever U.S. catches their salmon from, the fish are different.
But what's the serving size?
Well, that's the thing, is the serving size was different on both of them too. So one was 3 servings per can, the other was 4 servings per can. But when he broke down, like, all right, guys, we're back. That was strange. It just, everything went black.
The wonders of modern technology.
Absolutely.
It's fabulous when it works.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about serving size.
Yes.
The wonderful Steak and Iron, who I adore, even though we've never met, he's comparing those 2 cans of salmon brings up another great point, which is take all macro information with a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna give you a ballpark, but if you lose sleep over data that's given you, or macro data, you're going to be losing sleep needlessly, and you're going to stop your fat burning through stress.
Yeah.
So don't stress about it. Use it as a guide, but don't give yourself sleepless nights over macros. So, but serving size, super, super important.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you know how much of the contents of that packet, can, jar relates to the nutrition data that they've put on the back, because it often isn't the same.
Right.
And sometimes you will be amazed at how tiny amount of it you can eat to get the nutrition that they have suggested it holds. And again, ingredients are also important. I have typically found that the crappier the food, the worse the serving size fraud is. Yeah. So there's a correlation there, but that's kind of what seems to be common to me, is that the worse a food is for you, the more discrepancy there is between the serving size and the nutrition data on the label. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely believe that companies use the serving size to misguide us, because it looks better if they don't put all the fat and protein and carbs that are in the whole thing. It looks better if they put a different,
especially if they can get something that they know you don't want below the like the FDA level of being able to report it. So my favorite one is Tic Tacs. They can say that a Tic Tac is sugar-free, even though a Tic Tac is 99% sugar, because the serving size is one Tic Tac. The level of sugar doesn't reach the level of having to report it, and so you eat the Tic Tac. It says it's sugar-free. It's all it is sugar.
Hands up if you only eat one Tic Tac.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're eating half the box, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. So just read the ingredients, read the nutrition data, check the serving size, take it all with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Don't hang your hat on it, and don't eat Tic Tacs.
Don't eat Tic Tacs. That's good advice. That's real good advice.
The kind of fat, we mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. The kind of fat, don't just look and see, ooh, that's high fat, that's great. Look at the kind of fat. You want to avoid anything that has processed vegetable fats in the ingredients. You want to look for things that include olive, avocado, coconut, butter. You want to avoid soy, safflower, canola, all of those kinds of things. Even if the nutrient facts, the fat, protein, and carbs is all goodness, still check for the kinds of fats. There's a trend in the dressing department that has people putting avocado oil on the front of the bottle, and then you turn it over and it's 90% canola oil with like a splash of avocado oil. So don't be misled by the front of the label.
Mayonnaise too. Mayonnaise will do the same thing. Avocado oil mayonnaise, and it's not. It's all canola oil.
And it's canola oil. So just be super, super careful about that. If you want to find out your macros or calories for something, it's super easy, because there is a formula that holds true whatever. So 1 gram of fat is 9 calories.
Right.
It doesn't matter which fat, there's just 1 gram of fat, it will give you 9 calories. 1 gram of carbs will give you 4 calories. 1 gram of protein will give you 4 calories. So you can easily multiply if you work out your macros by calculating calories. Some people do it a different way, but if you multiply it using calories, that's how you can quickly do the math using the data on a label to figure out how many calories are in it. So for fat, multiply the number of grams by 9. For carbs and protein, multiply the number of grams by 4. That all added up will give you the calorie content of that thing. And lastly, opt for the best choice.
Yes.
If in doubt, just don't buy it.
Yeah.
But if you've got if you're in a grocery store, there's like, how many different pasta sauces are there nowadays?
Exactly.
Like whatever. Buy the best one that is available to you.
Rouse is kind of my go-to, and there's another one that I always forget the name of, but I recognize the label when I see it. But Rouse doesn't have any added sugar typically.
Trader Joe's has several, but I know not everyone lives near a Trader Joe's, but Trader Joe's actually has several tomato products, cans and jars that have no added sugar. So Trader Joe's, for budgetary reasons, Trader Joe's is always my go-to for things like that.
Something else that I'll do is I'll buy one of the bigger cans of tomato sauce, just the tomato sauce, and put it in a skillet. And my wife grows herbs, so a ton of oregano, a ton of basil, some salt. Let it simmer for, doesn't take long, 10 minutes. Stir it up, and I have a pretty good tomato sauce just out of tomato sauce.
Yep, and I often do the same because it's also cheaper. At Trader Joe's, they have cans of just basically pureed tomatoes,
right,
which has nothing in it and no sugar. And it's super cheap and super low in carbs. And I will just buy that to use as a base for pasta sauce rather than buying the more expensive jars, which have other ingredients in.
Exactly.
So as I say, don't opt for the best choice. If in doubt, don't buy it. But I don't want you to be overwhelmed by this information, and just bear in mind that once you've been through this process of finding out which is the good tomato sauce and which is the good tomato paste and which is the good chicken broth and which is the good beef stock and which is the good yogurt, then you're done. Then you just know you can keep it. Okay, these are the brands I buy, and you know what to do. And then it just gets super, super simple because you can avoid like 90% of the entire grocery store because you know.
Yeah, if I ever went into the grocery store and it only had the products that I could buy in it, it would fit inside my pantry. I mean, the whole grocery store would fit inside my living room probably.
Right.
So there's just not a whole lot of things you have to learn once you learn it.
Right. So I highly recommend that you get over the hump of clearing out your garbage, restocking for a keto pantry, and reading labels until you find out the best products available in your area for you. And then that's all you need to buy. And then your fresh meat, your fresh fish, your fresh keto veggies, and then you're done. And then once you've got over that hump, it all becomes simple and a lot easier, and it costs a lot less, and it takes a lot less time once you've got over that hump. But I highly encourage you to get over that hump because your keto journey will be a lot easier and a lot more successful in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, Carrie, I really appreciate you coming on. Guys, we're going to have links to everything she mentioned in the show notes at mysugarfreejourney.com/podcast. Lots of great information there. The list that she mentioned, I'm going to put a link to those Carolina Gold pork rinds, more to remind me more than anything else, and everything else that we mentioned. So, Carrie, I appreciate you coming on.
Always a pleasure. Love doing this show with you, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, we'll be right back with some more information.